A black boy rescues a toddler from the train tracks, but the next day a man in a suit is waiting outside his school, holding mysterious papers. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. Jamal Johnson adjusted his worn beige t-shirt as the rumble of the approaching train echoed across the crowded platform. The same train he'd pulled that little boy from yesterday, the same place where his ordinary life had been turned upside down. Phone flashes still haunted him, people pointing and whispering, "That's him, the hero," while all he wanted was to disappear. He pulled his hood lower, hoping to blend into the morning commute crowd. It didn't help. A woman nudged her friend, nodding in his direction. A businessman did a double take, then pulled out his phone. Jamal turned away, focusing on the electronic schedule board, counting the minutes until he could escape this spotlight. Yesterday had started like any other in his neighborhood on the outskirts. Waking up early, helping his younger siblings get ready for school, making the 40-minute journey to his underfunded high school. But now, one day after the rescue that had gone viral on social media, Jamal found himself surrounded by reporters outside his school. The principal tried to shoo them away, while other students stared curiously at their classmate, who had suddenly become the center of attention. "Jamal, how did it feel jumping onto the tracks?" shouted a reporter, thrusting a microphone toward him. "Did you think about your own safety?" asked another. He kept his head down, hunching his shoulders as if he could make himself smaller. His mother, Letitia, had begged him to stay home, but Jamal had insisted on going to school. Missing meant losing points on the math test he needed to pass to improve his grades. "Leave the kid alone." Marcus, his older brother, appeared, pushing reporters aside. At 19, working 2 jobs to help at home, Marcus had always protected Jamal. "Come on, bro, I'll take you home." As they walked away from the school, Jamal's phone vibrated continuously with notifications. A local journalist had somehow gotten his number, and now several news channels wanted interviews. A city council member wanted him to participate in a ceremony at City Hall. "This will pass," said Marcus, noticing his brother's discomfort. "In a few days, they'll find some other hero to chase after." But Jamal knew it wasn't that simple. The video of him jumping onto the tracks, grabbing the little boy and tossing him back onto the platform seconds before the train rushed past was on every news outlet. "I just did what anyone would do," he mumbled. "Anyone wouldn't jump in front of a train, Jamal. You almost died." Arriving at the housing project where they lived, more people approached them. Mrs. Williams, a longtime neighbor, hugged Jamal with tears in her eyes. "My boy, you're an angel." Other neighbors applauded. The attention suffocated him. Inside their small apartment, Letitia was frying chicken for dinner, trying to maintain a normalcy that no longer existed. "The school called," she said, wiping her hands on her apron. "They said journalists invaded the yard, and the mother of the boy you saved wants to visit us tomorrow." Jamal felt his heart tighten. "Mom, I don't want this. I just want everything to go back to normal." Letitia sat beside her son. "We don't always get to choose when our lives change, baby. Sometimes it's one moment that defines everything." That night, as he tried to sleep, Jamal relived the moment. The desperate mother's scream, the little boy falling onto the platform, rolling onto the tracks. There had been no thought, only action. Now, lying in the bed he shared with his younger brother, he wondered if he would have done the same, knowing the consequences. The stares, the expectations, people treating him like he was special when he felt so ordinary. "You did a brave thing," whispered his younger brother, Kevin, in the darkness. "The kids at my school think you're like Spider-Man now." Jamal sighed. "I'm not a superhero, Kev. I just happened to be there." "But you saved him, when most people just watch." Jamal had no answer for that. It was true. He'd seen countless videos online of people filming tragedies instead of helping. But that didn't make him special. It just made him human. The next morning, Jamal left for school early, hoping to avoid another media circus. His mother had ironed his best shirt, a simple blue button-up with a small tear in the sleeve that she'd carefully mended, as if looking presentable would somehow make this situation easier. "Keep your head up," Letitia said, straightening his collar. "You did nothing wrong. Be proud." "Yes, ma'am," he replied automatically, though pride was the furthest thing from what he felt. The school day dragged on, a blur of curious stares and whispered conversations that stopped whenever he entered a room. His friends acted differently too, some avoiding him, others suddenly wanting to hang out, as if his 15 minutes of fame might somehow rub off on them. Ms. Rodriguez, his English teacher, pulled him aside after class. "Jamal, if you need to talk, my door is always open. Sudden attention can be challenging." He nodded, grateful but unable to express how he felt. How could he explain that he didn't feel like a hero? That the weight of everyone's expectations was crushing him? When the final bell rang, Jamal slipped out the back entrance, a route usually taken by students sneaking cigarettes. He just wanted to avoid another confrontation with reporters. His plan seemed to work as he navigated the empty corridor leading to the service exit. Pushing open the heavy metal door, Jamal froze. A white man in an expensive suit blocked his escape route, holding a portfolio and looking directly at him. Jamal's heart raced. Lawyers in suits usually meant trouble in his neighborhood. Trouble with rent, with social services, with the police. "Are you Jamal Johnson?" the man asked, stepping forward. Jamal thought about running, but his feet seemed glued to the ground. What if something had happened to the little boy afterward? What if the family was suing him for some reason? His family could barely pay the bills, let alone afford a lawyer. "Yes, sir," he replied, his throat dry. "My name is Richard Blackwood," the man said, extending his hand. "I'm an attorney representing the Chen family. Little Michael, the boy you saved, they asked me to find you." All Jamal could think about was how that suit probably cost more than 3 months of his family's rent. "Look," continued Blackwood, opening his portfolio, "I have some documents here that I need your mother to see. It's about an opportunity, Jamal. An opportunity that could change your life." Just then, Marcus appeared, eyes narrowed with suspicion. "My brother isn't signing anything. Who are you, and what do you want with him?" The man smiled, but his eyes remained serious. "I'm not asking him to sign anything. I'm offering a chance. Winslow Academy is offering a full scholarship for Jamal." The words hung in the air like something impossible. Winslow Academy, the elite school where the children of doctors, lawyers, and politicians studied. The kind of place Jamal had never imagined setting foot in. "Why?" was all he could ask. "Because Mr. Chen is one of the Academy's largest donors, and because the board agrees that talent and character like yours shouldn't go to waste." Marcus took the papers, suspicious. "We'll take this to our mom to look over." As they walked home, Jamal felt like he was in a strange dream. Yesterday, just an ordinary kid wearing his worn beige t-shirt. Today, someone an elite school wanted in their hallways. "This isn't free, Jamal," Marcus muttered. "Nothing in this life is." Jamal knew his brother was right. What he didn't know was the price he would have to pay. Back home, Letitia stared at the documents, hands trembling slightly. "Winslow Academy," she whispered, almost reverently. "Do you know how many doors this could open for you, baby?" "But why me?" Jamal asked, the question that had been eating at him since Blackwood appeared. "There's nothing special about me. You saved a child's life," Letitia said firmly. "So they're, what, rewarding me? People do good things every day without getting scholarships." Marcus leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed. "The man said this Chen guy is a big donor. His kid is the one Jamal saved. It's not about charity. It's about gratitude. Plus," he added with a cynical edge, "private schools love their diversity statistics." Letitia shot Marcus a warning look. Don't put that negativity out there. This is a blessing. Later that evening, Jamal sat on the fire escape outside their apartment window, staring at the city lights, the distant train tracks visible as dark lines cutting through neighborhoods. His phone buzzed with another text from a number he didn't recognize. Saw you on the news. So brave. Would you want to do an interview for my podcast? He silenced the phone without responding. A cool breeze carried the sounds of the city. Car horns, distant sirens, music from someone's open window. Normal sounds that had always been the soundtrack to his life. Would that change too? Would Winslow Academy with its manicured lawns and stone buildings become his new normal? The window creaked open behind him. Marcus climbed out, offering a can of soda. You've been quiet, his older brother observed. Jamal shrugged. Just thinking. About the scholarship? About everything. Yesterday I was nobody. Today people act like I'm somebody important, but I'm still the same person. Marcus took a long sip from his can. The world doesn't care who you really are, little brother. They care about the story they can tell about you. That's messed up. That's reality. Marcus's voice softened. But this opportunity, this could be real. A way out. Better education, better college, better life. What if I don't fit in? Those rich kids. You think I don't worry about that? But you're smart, Jamal. Smarter than me. And you know how to adapt. They sat in silence for a moment, watching the city lights flicker. Mom's going to say yes, Jamal finally said. Of course she is. Any mother would. What would you do? If it was you? Marcus looked at him seriously. I'd grab this chance with both hands and never let go. But I'd also remember where I came from. Who I am. As the night deepened, Jamal stared at the papers Marcus had placed beside him. Winslow Academy's crest gleamed at the top of the letterhead, a coat of arms with Latin words he couldn't understand. Behind the fancy words and promises lay a world he knew nothing about, governed by rules no one had ever taught him. Jamal looked down at the documents, the magnitude of what lay before him finally sinking in. Yesterday, just an ordinary kid wearing his worn beige t-shirt. Today, someone an elite school wanted in their hallways. This isn't free, Jamal, Marcus muttered. Nothing in this life is. And Jamal knew his brother was right. What he didn't know was the price he would have to pay. The uniform of Winslow Academy itched at Jamal's neck. 3 weeks had passed since lawyer Richard Blackwood had appeared with the impossible-to-refuse offer, and now he walked through the gleaming hallways of a school that seemed straight out of a movie. His mother had cried when signing the full scholarship papers, seeing the chance she never had. Marcus remained skeptical, but wouldn't interfere with what could be Jamal's ticket out of poverty. Hey, Spider-Man, shouted a blond boy, laughing with other students. Going to save anyone today? Jamal kept his eyes on the floor. At Winslow, he wasn't just the new kid. He was an attraction, the subway hero who now occupied a place among the privileged. Principal Hayes had introduced him at the morning assembly as an example of courage, turning his story into a motivational inspiration that left him shrinking in his chair. The uniform felt foreign against his skin. The crisp white shirt, navy blazer with the embroidered Winslow crest, and gray slacks were unlike anything he'd ever worn. His mother had spent an hour that morning making sure every crease was perfect, her pride evident in her careful attention to detail. But the clothes felt like a costume, something he was wearing to play a part in someone else's story. Don't mind them, said Zoe, one of the few black students at the school, sitting next to him in literature class. They're jealous because you did something that actually matters. Zoe wore her uniform with confident ease, her box braids styled in a way that somehow made the restrictive dress code look like a personal choice rather than a requirement. She'd been the only student to approach him, without the awkward fascination others displayed. Professor Whitman clapped his hands for attention. Today we'll be discussing Charles Dickens' Great Expectations. Can anyone summarize the central theme of the work? A hand rose. It's about social mobility and the illusion that changing class can solve all of someone's problems. Jamal felt all eyes turn to him. The message was clear. You don't belong here. During lunch, sitting alone at a distant table, Jamal checked messages on his phone. His old friends had stopped texting after the first week, as if he'd crossed an invisible boundary, becoming inaccessible. The cafeteria itself was nothing like his old schools. Instead of plastic trays and questionable mystery meat, Winslow offered what looked like restaurant-quality food. Students casually discarded half-eaten meals that would have fed his family for days. "Johnson," called Coach Reynolds, approaching with a calculating smile. "I saw your times in PE class. I want you on the track team." "I don't know if I can, sir. I have to catch the bus home and help my mom with—" "The school will provide transportation," interrupted the coach. "Winslow hasn't won the state championship in 5 years. We need someone with your natural abilities." The euphemism hung between them. Natural abilities, as if his skin color determined his athletic capability. "I'll think about it," Jamal replied, knowing this wasn't really a request. The rest of the day dragged on. In calculus, concepts he'd never been exposed to flew past him, while other students nodded in bored familiarity. In history, discussions of European monarchies assumed background knowledge he didn't possess. Each class widened the gap between his previous education and what Winslow expected him to already know. By the final bell, Jamal's shoulders ached with tension. As he approached his locker, he found his books scattered on the floor, the word charity scrawled in marker across his notebook. He quickly gathered his things, ignoring the snickers from a group of boys down the hall. The bus ride home felt like traveling between worlds. With each stop, the neighborhoods changed, growing progressively less manicured until he reached the familiar streets of his own community. People recognized him here too, but their recognition came with genuine warmth rather than curiosity or disdain. At home, bills were piling up on the kitchen table. Letitia worked double shifts as a nursing assistant, while Marcus had just lost one of his jobs due to cutbacks. "How was school?" asked Letitia, exhausted but smiling. "Normal," Jamal lied. How could he explain the chasm he felt growing between who he was and who he needed to be to survive in that new world? "Normal good or normal bad?" she pressed, her eyes searching his face. "Just normal," he repeated, dropping his backpack on a kitchen chair. "What's for dinner?" "Leftovers from yesterday. There's chicken in the fridge." She studied him. "You know you can talk to me, right? If things aren't going well at that fancy school." "It's fine, Mom. I'm adjusting." She didn't look convinced, but didn't push. "Your guidance counselor called. Says you haven't been to see her yet. They assigned someone special to help scholarship students transition." Jamal felt heat rise to his face. Scholarship students was just another way of saying poor kids who don't belong. "I'll go tomorrow," he promised, knowing he wouldn't. The phone rang. It was from the hospital. Letitia answered, her face paling. "It's Marcus. There's been an accident at the construction site." At the hospital, Marcus was in a bed with a broken leg and fractured ribs. "Scaffolding gave way," he explained, grimacing in pain. "No health insurance, and no job now." The small emergency room cubicle felt suffocating. Marcus, always the strong one, looked diminished under the harsh hospital lights. A doctor had briefly explained the situation. Surgery needed for the leg, weeks of recovery, thousands in medical bills. "Don't worry about it," Marcus said, trying to smile through the pain. "I'll figure something out." Jamal felt the weight of reality crushing his shoulders. Without Marcus's income, they'd barely be able to pay rent. The Winslow uniform suddenly felt like a grotesque costume. That night, he heard his mother crying softly in the kitchen after she thought everyone was asleep. The sound cut through him like a knife. Here he was, attending an elite school while his family struggled to keep a roof over their heads. The next morning, Jamal was summoned to Principal Hayes' office. Her space was immaculate, with framed diplomas on the walls and a large desk that seemed designed to intimidate. She was a thin woman with a perpetual expression of mild disapproval. "I heard about the accident with your brother," Hayes said. "The Chen family is willing to help with the medical expenses." Jamal's stomach sank. "Why?" "Because your presence at Winslow is important to us," Hayes replied, smiling without showing her teeth. "We simply need you to participate in some events. Meetings with donors, interviews for the school press. Stories like yours inspire people to support our scholarship program." Jamal understood the exchange. His story, his image in return for financial help. His narrative no longer belonged to him. "What kind of events?" he asked cautiously. "Nothing too demanding. A fundraising gala next month. Perhaps a feature in our alumni newsletter. Mr. Chen specifically suggested you might speak to potential donors about your experience." The implication was clear. They wanted him to perform his gratitude, to be the success story they could parade before wealthy patrons. "And if I do this, they'll pay for Marcus's treatment?" Hayes nodded. "The Chen family has already arranged to cover the medical bills. They simply hope you'll show appropriate gratitude by helping the school that's helping you." The words stung, but Jamal thought of his mother's tears, of Marcus's pain. "I'll do it." That afternoon during track practice, Tyler, the team captain, deliberately bumped into Jamal. "We all know why you're here," he whispered. "The school needs your pathetic story for their fundraising campaigns. When the show's over, you'll go back to your place." Something inside Jamal exploded. Years of containing anger. Years pretending not to notice the looks, the whispers. He shoved Tyler hard, throwing him to the track ground. Within seconds, other boys were separating them. "Johnson! In my office now!" shouted the coach. In the principal's office, Hayes regarded him with calculated disappointment. "We understand that your situation is different, but violence will not be tolerated." "He provoked me," Jamal defended himself. "Of course he did," Hayes sighed. "And they'll continue to provoke if you react like this. You cannot give ammunition to those who doubt you belong here." The phrase hit Jamal like a punch. Those who doubt you belong here, including herself. As he left Hayes' office, the reality of his position became painfully clear. He wasn't a student at Winslow. He was a project, a token, a charity case they could discard if he didn't perform properly. In the hallway, Tyler stood waiting with a group of friends. Jamal tensed, ready for another confrontation, but Tyler merely smirked and walked away. On the bus ride home, Jamal's phone buzzed with a notification. Opening it, he found an invitation, a party at Tyler's house that weekend. The same boy who had insulted him hours before. The next message was clearer. "Come, prove you're one of us now." Jamal stared at the screen in disbelief. Was this a peace offering or another trap? At home, he found his mother crying with an eviction notice in her hands. 2 weeks to find another place. Marcus's accident had been the final blow to their already precarious finances. "I'll drop out of school and get a job," Jamal said. "No." Letitia held her son's hands. "This is your chance. I'll work overtime, we'll manage." "Mom, be realistic. We can't pay rent. Marcus can't work. How are we supposed to—" "The Chen family called the hospital," she interrupted. "They've paid all of Marcus's medical bills. And they've offered to help with our rent situation, too." Jamal fell silent. The Chens were extending their help beyond the scholarship, beyond the hospital bills. They were reaching into every aspect of his life, creating a debt he could never repay. That night, unable to sleep, Jamal looked out the window at the distant tracks where the train passed. A single moment had changed everything. He had saved a life and now was losing his own, divided between worlds that rejected him for different reasons. His phone vibrated. It was Richard Blackwood. "The Chen family wants to meet with you tomorrow. They have a proposal that could help your family." Jamal looked at Marcus sleeping restlessly, at his exhausted mother on the couch. What would be the next price to pay? What part of himself would he need to sacrifice now? The Chen family's mansion stood in a neighborhood Jamal only knew from TV reports. Perfectly manicured gardens, imported cars in driveways, discreet security guards at gates. Richard Blackwood waited for him at the entrance, his impeccable suit contrasting with Jamal's already worn Winslow uniform. "Remember to be polite and grateful," instructed Blackwood. "Mr. Chen is not just Michael's father. He's one of the most influential men in the city." Jamal nodded, tugging at his tie. The lawyer had picked him up directly from school, giving him no time to change or even properly prepare mentally for this meeting. The immaculate driveway seemed to stretch for miles, leading to a house that looked more like a small castle. "Do they expect me to bow or something?" Jamal muttered under his breath. Blackwood shot him a warning glance. "Just follow my lead." The massive front door opened before they could knock, revealing a uniformed housekeeper who led them through a foyer larger than Jamal's entire apartment. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings. Original artwork adorned walls that seemed to stretch endlessly. In the living room, larger than his entire apartment, Jamal found Edward Chen, a man with a severe expression, his American wife, Catherine, and little Michael, the boy he had saved. Michael smiled shyly, hiding behind his mother. "So this is the young hero," said Edward, analyzing Jamal. His voice was measured with the faintest trace of an accent. His tailored suit probably cost more than everything Jamal's family owned. "My son would be dead if it weren't for you." "Anyone would have done the same, sir." Edward smiled as if Jamal had told a naive joke. "No, they wouldn't. That's why we're interested in you." Catherine offered tea in porcelain cups that Jamal was afraid to break. She was younger than her husband, with perfect blonde hair and a practiced smile that never quite reached her eyes. "We've heard about your family's situation," she said. "Your brother's accident, the problem with your apartment." Jamal felt his stomach turn. How much did they know? Who was informing them about the details of his private life? "We want to help," continued Edward. "Not just with your brother's medical expenses, but also with a new apartment. A better place, closer to Winslow." Jamal nearly dropped his cup. "A new apartment?" "In exchange," Edward continued, "we'd like you to participate in our foundation. The Chen Foundation for Exceptional Youth. Your story would inspire others, show that with courage and determination, anyone can overcome their circumstances." "Anyone with a billionaire helping, you mean?" Jamal thought, but kept the comment to himself. He took a careful sip of tea, buying time while he processed what was being offered and what was being asked in return. "Also, we'd like you to accompany Michael to some events," added Catherine. "People would love to see you two together. The Savior and the Saved, a story of hope." Jamal looked at Michael, who was playing distractedly with an expensive tablet. The boy was just an innocent child in this adult game. "What kind of events?" Jamal asked cautiously. "Charity galas, foundation launches, perhaps a few interviews," Catherine replied. "Nothing too demanding, just a few hours of your time occasionally." "And the apartment, would it be—" Jamal hesitated, unsure how to phrase the question. "Fully paid for," Edward finished for him. "Your mother wouldn't need to worry about rent. We've found a suitable 3-bedroom in Westview Heights. Safe neighborhood, good schools for your younger siblings." Westview Heights. A middle-class area Jamal had passed through but never imagined living in. No broken elevators, no drug deals in stairwells, actual green space outside. "That's very generous," Jamal managed. Edward leaned forward. "What do you say? A new life for your family in exchange for some public appearances?" Michael suddenly looked up from his tablet. "Will you come to my birthday party next month? I'm telling everyone how you saved me. My friends think it's so cool." The simple, childish request, so innocent among all the adult calculations, caught Jamal off guard. "Sure, buddy, if your parents are okay with it." "Excellent," Edward said, as if the entire matter was settled. "Richard will handle the paperwork. You can move in next weekend." On the ride back, in the luxury car driven by Blackwood, Jamal remained silent, watching the neighborhoods change as they traveled from wealth to middle class to his own struggling area. "It's a unique opportunity," commented the lawyer. "Not just for you, but for your entire family. Your mother wouldn't have to work double shifts anymore. They want to display me, like a zoo animal." Blackwood sighed. "They want to help. In their way, yes, with conditions. But that's how the world works, Jamal. Nothing is free." "This isn't charity, it's a business transaction," Jamal said. "They get my story, my face, and I get... what? A temporary new life until they get bored of me?" "Mr. Chen doesn't do temporary. If he's investing in you, it's because he sees long-term value. Besides," Blackwood added, "this isn't just about you anymore. It's about your family, too." That last comment hit home. His mother's exhausted face, Marcus's pain, the eviction notice on their kitchen table. Did he have the right to refuse this opportunity because of his own pride? At home, he told everything to Marcus and Letitia. His mother cried with relief at the prospect of a new apartment. Marcus, however, seemed furious. "Don't you see what's happening?" Marcus struggled to sit up in his bed, wincing in pain. "They're buying you, bro. Buying your story, your image. They'll turn you into the poor boy who overcame adversity while pretending the system that keeps us in poverty doesn't exist." "And what do you suggest?" retorted Letitia. "That we refuse? Help out of pride? That Jamal quits Winslow? That we get evicted?" "There's always a price, Mom. Always strings attached. They don't want to help Jamal. They want to use him." "Well, maybe being used is better than being homeless," Letitia snapped, then immediately looked regretful. "I'm sorry, we need this, Marcus. All of us." The conflict was established, and Jamal was caught in the middle. That night he lay awake, the ceiling fan making irritating clicking sounds with each rotation. He could hear his mother on the phone in the kitchen, excitedly telling her sister about the new apartment. In the next room, Marcus's pain medication had finally kicked in, his breathing deep and steady. The next day at school, Jamal discovered the news was already circulating. Jamal Johnson would be the new face of the Chen Foundation. Some students seemed even more resentful, as if confirming he was only there through charity. During history class, studying social movements, the teacher asked about figures who sacrifice their principles for security or money. Like people who are used as symbols, but end up reinforcing the system that oppresses their own communities, completed the teacher, looking directly at Jamal. After class, Zoe approached him in the hallway. "I heard about the Chen Foundation. My parents were approached by them last year. It's a PR operation, Jamal. My father refused, said he wouldn't be a token for social whitewashing." "Your father could afford to refuse," Jamal replied, more sharply than he intended. "My family's about to be evicted." Zoe's expression softened. "I get it. I'm not judging you, just be careful. These people, they'll smile to your face while extracting everything useful from you. Trust me, I know their world." While processing that information, Jamal received a message. The party at Tyler's house would be that night. Part of him wanted to refuse, but another part desperately wanted to belong, to prove he could navigate this new world. Classes dragged that afternoon. In chemistry, Jamal's lab partner accidentally spilled solution on his uniform. In calculus, the teacher called on him repeatedly, highlighting his struggle with concepts the other students had mastered years ago. By final bell, he was exhausted from the constant tension of navigating Winslow's hostile environment. Still, he found himself getting ready for Tyler's party that evening. Letitia watched with concern as he tried on different shirts. "Are you sure about this? These are the same kids who've been giving you trouble?" "I need to try, Mom. Maybe they just need to get to know me outside school." She didn't look convinced, but helped him iron his best shirt anyway. "Just remember who you are, baby. Don't let anyone make you feel small." Tyler's mansion rivaled the Chen's. Music blasted, teenagers drank openly, an illuminated pool glowed in the backyard. Jamal felt out of place in his simple clothes. Tyler, surprisingly, greeted him with a smile. "Didn't think you'd show. Come on, want to introduce you to everyone." The fake camaraderie was disconcerting. Why the sudden change? The answer came when Tyler raised a loud toast. "To our local hero, the kid who's going to be the face of the Chen Foundation." The music stopped. All eyes turned to Jamal. "It's true," continued Tyler. "Our friend here is getting a new apartment and fame for jumping in front of a train. Who said poverty doesn't pay?" Laughter. Jamal felt his blood boil. "Hey, Jamal," shouted another boy. "How much does your dignity cost exactly? The price of rent?" More laughter. Then Tyler moved closer, whispering, "You'll never be one of us. You'll always be the school's charity project, the Chen's pet." Something exploded inside him. Years of contained anger erupted. Jamal lunged at Tyler, knocking him into the pool. Seconds later, security guards appeared from nowhere, dragging Jamal off the property. "Get out, charity case!" someone shouted as he was pushed through the gate. Hours later, soaked and with a cut lip after walking for miles, Jamal arrived home to find Richard Blackwood waiting with his mother. "The Peterson family is suing you for assault," informed the lawyer, his expression grave. "And the Chens are reconsidering the deal." The ground seemed to disappear beneath his feet. In one night, he had lost everything. The Winslow scholarship was at risk, the new apartment was no longer certain, and now he faced a lawsuit from a powerful family. "But we can fix this," continued Blackwood. "The Chens still want you as the face of the foundation, with one condition, that you make a public statement apologizing to the Peterson family. Admit your mistake. Say you're learning to control your impulsive nature." Impulsive nature. The euphemism for problematic young black man's behavior didn't go unnoticed. "You want me to publicly humiliate myself," Jamal concluded. "I want you to save your future," corrected Blackwood. "Sometimes we need to swallow our pride to achieve something greater." That night, alone on the building's roof, Jamal watched the trains passing in the distance. A single act of courage put him in this impossible situation. An impulsive jump to save a life now required him to sell his soul in exchange for security. His phone vibrated. It was a message from Winslow. His presence was requested in the principal's office tomorrow to discuss his future at the institution. Another message, this time from an unknown number, contained a link to a video. Jamal pushing Tyler into the pool, filmed from an angle that didn't show the prior provocation, only his violent reaction. The caption read, "The hero shows his true nature." The video already had thousands of views. In Principal Hayes' office, the silence was oppressive. On the desk lay the scholarship contract, the Peterson family's lawsuit, and a tablet playing the video on loop. Jamal assaulting Tyler, decontextualized and edited to appear as an unprovoked attack. "This is deeply disappointing," Hayes finally said. "We gave you a unique opportunity, Jamal. A chance that many young people from your community can only dream of." Beside her, Richard Blackwood maintained a neutral expression. Across the table, Letitia held her son's hand tightly. "Winslow Academy has a reputation to uphold," Hayes continued. "We cannot tolerate violence, regardless of the circumstances." "He was provoked," Letitia interjected. "My son is not violent." Hayes raised an eyebrow. The evidence suggests otherwise, Mrs. Johnson. Jamal stared at the tablet, watching himself push Tyler into the pool over and over. The video conveniently started after Tyler's whispered insults, showing only Jamal's reaction. He wanted to explain, to defend himself, but what was the point? They had already decided who he was. The office itself seemed designed to intimidate, with its dark wood paneling, rows of leather-bound books, and framed photographs of Hayes with various dignitaries. Jamal noticed one showing her shaking hands with Edward Chen at some gala. Just then, the door opened without warning. Edward Chen entered, followed by Catherine and, surprisingly, Marcus, supported by crutches. "Sorry for the delay," said Chen, taking a seat as if the room belonged to him. In many ways it did. His name was on one of the school's wings. "Mr. Chen," Hayes adjusted herself, nervous. "We weren't expecting you." "Evidently," Chen replied dryly, looking at the tablet with the video. "I see you're already judging the young man who saved my son's life." Jamal observed the dynamic shift in the room. Hayes, so confident moments before, now seemed anxious to please Chen. "The board is considering suspension," explained Hayes, "given the incident and the lawsuit." "What lawsuit?" interrupted Chen. "The Peterson family withdrew their complaint this morning. We had an illuminating conversation." Chen turned to Jamal. "Mr. Johnson, as a lawyer, before becoming a businessman, I learned that context is everything. That's why I asked for the complete security footage from the Peterson house." He displayed his own tablet. The unedited video showed Tyler provoking Jamal for minutes, making racist comments, pushing him first. "Interesting how certain parts were omitted from the video circulating online," observed Chen. Hayes paled. "We had no knowledge, and apparently didn't bother to investigate before calling this meeting." Chen smiled coldly. "Principal Hayes, the Chen Foundation will be re-evaluating its annual donation for Winslow's sports facilities. It seems to me the school needs to invest more in genuine diversity and inclusion, not just statistics for annual reports." The atmosphere in the room had completely reversed. Now it was Hayes who seemed to be on trial. "Mr. Johnson," continued Chen, turning to Jamal, "I want to make something clear. What we're offering you isn't charity. It's an investment. You demonstrated courage, integrity, and determination in saving my son. These qualities cannot be bought or taught." Marcus, who had remained silent, finally spoke. "Mr. Chen showed us the real proposal before this meeting. It's not about using Jamal as a mascot. It's about what he can do for his community when given the right tools." Chen nodded. "The Foundation's true proposal is broader. We want Jamal to have mentorship and resources to develop projects in his own neighborhood. We don't want to separate him from his roots, but to empower him to strengthen his community." The realization hit Jamal like a wave. It wasn't about choosing between two worlds, but building bridges between them. "And the school?" asked Letitia, still concerned. "The scholarship remains," assured Chen, "but with different conditions. Jamal won't be a symbol or attraction, but a student with the same rights and responsibilities as any other." Hayes, sensing the power shift, quickly adapted. "Of course, it was always our intention for Jamal to be treated like any other student." "Excellent," concluded Chen, standing up, "because any further incidents of discrimination or harassment will be dealt with extremely seriously." Jamal tried to process what had just happened. The threat of expulsion, the lawsuit, the humiliation, all wiped away with a few words from Chen. It showed both the unfairness of the system and, paradoxically, how it could occasionally work in his favor when someone with even more power intervened. "Why would you do this for me?" Jamal found himself asking Chen as they left the office. "My son hasn't stopped talking about you since the accident," Chen replied. "But yesterday he asked me why you always looked sad in pictures. Children see through pretense better than adults." Outside the school, Jamal finally breathed freely. Something had changed, not just externally, but within him. For the first time since the rescue, he felt he had regained control of his own narrative. "How did this happen?" he asked Marcus. "How did you convince Mr. Chen?" Marcus smiled. "We didn't convince him. He came to our apartment last night, after hearing about the incident. Said he was dissatisfied with how Blackwood was handling things. Apparently, Michael asked why you seemed sad in photos." They walked toward the car where Catherine waited with Michael. "He showed up at our door," Marcus continued. "No warning, no entourage, just knocked and introduced himself. Mom nearly fainted." "He came himself? Not Blackwood?" "Said some things need personal attention. When he saw our place, our situation, something changed in him. He started talking about growing up without much himself, before he made it big." Jamal thought about the severe businessman who had seemed so distant and calculating at first. The idea that he had once struggled seemed impossible. "He saw the eviction notice on the table," Marcus added. "That's when he made the new offer. Not just an apartment, Jamal, a real chance. To help others, too." In the car, Michael brightened when he saw Jamal. "Are you coming to our house again? Mom made cookies." Catherine smiled apologetically. "He's been asking about you constantly." "Actually," Edward Chen said, joining them, "I thought we might show Jamal the community center property today if he's interested." "Community center?" Jamal asked. "The foundation has a vacant building in your neighborhood. It's been unused for years. I think it would make an excellent base for the mentorship program we discussed." The following hours were a blur. They drove to a rundown but spacious building near Jamal's neighborhood. Once a recreation center, it had been closed due to budget cuts years ago. Chen explained his vision. Renovate it as a multi-purpose space where students from disadvantaged backgrounds could receive tutoring, career guidance, and access to resources. "And you want me to," Jamal asked, "help design it, run it eventually. You know what young people in your community need better than any consultant I could hire." The scale of what Chen was proposing was overwhelming. This wasn't just about Jamal anymore, or even his family. It was about creating something lasting that could help countless others. "Why me? Because I jumped on those tracks?" Chen considered this. "That jump revealed character. But it's what I've observed since then that matters more. How you've handled pressure, adversity, discrimination. How you've remained authentic despite being pulled in different directions." Later, after seeing the proposed apartment, modest but clean in a safe neighborhood, Chen dropped Jamal and Marcus home. Their mother was waiting anxiously. "It's all settled," Marcus told her. "No lawsuit, no expulsion, and way more than we expected." That night, the Johnson family had their first peaceful dinner in weeks. Letitia cooked a celebration meal, using ingredients Chen had discreetly arranged to have delivered. Marcus's pain seemed less severe, bolstered by the day's positive turn. Even Jamal's younger siblings sensed the change in atmosphere. After dinner, Jamal stepped outside for fresh air. The familiar sounds of his neighborhood, distant sirens, music from apartments, children playing despite the late hour, surrounded him. Soon they would leave this place. Part of him felt relief, but another part wondered if he was betraying something essential by moving on. His phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. "Heard what happened. Chen shut down the whole witch hunt. Respect. Talk tomorrow?" Before he could respond, another message appeared. From Tyler. "My parents are sending me to boarding school. Guess you won." Jamal stared at the message. It didn't feel like winning. Nothing about this situation had winners, only different kinds of survivors. Inside, he found Marcus on the couch, scrolling through listings for physical therapy programs. "Chen's assistant called," Marcus said without looking up. "They're covering my PT and connected me with a job training program for when I'm healed." "This is all happening so fast," Jamal said, sinking into the chair opposite his brother. That's how opportunity works. It doesn't announce itself or wait for your permission. It breaks in like a thief in the night. Or like a train barreling down the tracks, Jamal added with a grim smile. Marcus looked up. You know what the craziest part is? One moment, one decision, and everything changes. You jumping on those tracks. Chen deciding to come here himself instead of sending his lawyer. One different choice and we'd still be facing eviction. Jamal nodded, thinking about all the parallel lives that might have existed. Ones where he hesitated on the platform, where Chen remained a distant benefactor, where he never had to navigate these complex worlds of privilege and expectation. What now? He asked. Now, Marcus said. You stop reacting and start acting. You've got power you didn't have before. Resources, connections, a platform. Question is, what are you going to do with it? The next morning, Jamal returned to Winslow with a different energy. Students still stared, still whispered, but their words seemed to hold less power over him. In literature class, he raised his hand for the first time, offering his own interpretation of the text. Professor Whitman seemed startled but nodded approvingly. During lunch, Zoe joined him. You look different today, less hunched, like you finally decided to take up space. I realize something, Jamal replied. I've been so worried about not belonging in either world that I forgot I can help build something new between them. After school, he returned to the community center building with a notebook full of ideas. Chen had given him a key, telling him to explore and envision what could be. The empty rooms echoed with possibility. Upon returning home, Jamal found an envelope on his bed containing a new project from the Chen Foundation. Not to showcase his story, but to give him resources to write a new chapter for his entire community. Jamal sat on his small bed, the one he shared with his younger brother Kevin, studying the details in the envelope. Blueprints for a renovated community center, mentorship programs, and scholarship opportunities. The faint moonlight through the window illuminated the papers scattered around him, each representing a different facet of the project that had suddenly become his responsibility. You still up? Marcus whispered from the doorway, leaning on his crutches. Can't sleep, Jamal replied. This is a lot. Marcus hobbled over, carefully lowering himself onto the edge of the bed. He picked up one of the papers, a draft budget with numbers larger than anything their family had ever handled. Chen isn't playing small, Marcus observed. Question is, are you ready for this? Jamal shrugged. How could anyone be ready? A month ago I was just trying to pass algebra. Now I'm supposed to run a community project. That's how opportunity works. It doesn't wait for you to be ready. The next afternoon, Jamal stood in the dilapidated community center, facing a small group of skeptical neighbors. The peeling paint, broken windows, and graffiti-covered walls made Chen's vision seem impossibly distant. Mrs. Rodriguez, his former elementary school teacher, crossed her arms as he explained the proposal. So this rich man wants to fix up this old building, she said, and turn it into some kind of tutoring center. What's the catch? There's no catch, Jamal insisted. Mr. Chen wants to invest in our community. Rich people don't just give money away, son, said Mr. Washington, who ran the corner store. They always want something in return. They get tax breaks, someone else called out. That's what this is about. Jamal felt his confidence wavering. He'd expected enthusiasm, not suspicion, but looking at the worn faces around him, people who'd been promised improvements by politicians, developers, and do-gooders who never delivered, he understood their skepticism. Look, Marcus interjected from his seat. I had the same questions, but I've met Chen, looked him in the eye. This isn't some photo op for him. The money is real. The commitment is real. And why's your brother in charge? Asked Darnell, a former classmate of Jamal's. Because he jumped on some train tracks? What does he know about running anything? The question stung because they echoed Jamal's own doubts. Who was he to lead this project? A 16-year-old with no experience, chosen because of one impulsive act. I don't know everything, Jamal admitted, but I know what we need. After-school programs that actually help with homework, job training that leads to real opportunities, a safe place for kids to go instead of hanging on street corners. He looked around at the dubious faces. I'm not asking you to trust Chen or even me. I'm asking you to help build something we control for once, our community, our rules. The meeting ended with more questions than commitments, but a few people stayed behind to discuss specific ideas. Mrs. Rodriguez offered to help coordinate educational programs. Mr. Washington suggested local businesses that might contribute supplies. Small steps, but a start. The next day at Winslow, Jamal searched for Zoe in the crowded cafeteria. He found her sitting alone, reading a book while ignoring her untouched lunch. I need your help, he said, sliding into the seat across from her. She raised an eyebrow. With what? Your social rehabilitation after the Tyler incident? I need to get other Winslow students involved in the community center project. No one knows this place better than you. Zoe closed her book. You're serious about this? It's not just some performance to satisfy Chen? Dead serious, but I can't do it alone. She studied him for a moment. Most of these kids have never set foot in a neighborhood like yours. Their community service usually involves planting trees in already nice parks. That's why I need your help. You know how to talk to them. By the end of lunch, Zoe had agreed to help organize a student meeting. The results, however, were disappointing. Only 5 students showed up, and most seemed more interested in adding community service to their college applications than in making a real difference. This is a unique opportunity, Jamal explained, trying to sound confident. Not just tutoring kids, but building bridges between communities. Will we need, like, security or something? Asked one girl, twirling her hair. My dad says those neighborhoods can be dangerous. Another boy snickered. Maybe Jamal can jump in and save us if anything happens. Zoe shot them a withering look, but the damage was done. By the time the meeting ended, only 2 students had reluctantly signed up to help. That went well, Jamal muttered as they gathered their things. Did you expect different? Zoe asked. These kids live in bubbles. Breaking them takes time. That weekend, Edward Chen arranged for Jamal to meet with several business leaders and professionals willing to mentor young people from his neighborhood. The meeting took place in a downtown office building that made Jamal feel underdressed in his best clothes. These are people who started with nothing, Chen explained as they rode the elevator. They understand the value of opportunity because they had to fight for every inch. The meeting was intimidating but productive. A black woman who owned a successful tech company offered to provide computers and teach coding. A Hispanic man who'd built a construction business promised apprenticeships for interested students. A former teacher turned educational consultant volunteered to design a curriculum tailored to the community's needs. You've got supporters, Chen told him afterward, but the hard work is just beginning. The hard work included endless forms, permit applications, and meetings with city officials who seemed determined to delay the project. One afternoon, after a particularly frustrating session with the zoning board, Jamal vented his frustration to Chen. They keep asking for more documentation, more signatures. It's like they don't want us to succeed. Chen nodded. Bureaucracy is often used as a weapon against change. That's why persistence matters more than initial enthusiasm. A week later, the center welcomed its first visitors, a small group of elementary school children whose parents needed after-school care. The space was still rough, with folding tables and chairs donated by a local church, but it was a start. Jamal found himself trying to explain fractions to 3 fidgety 10-year-olds, discovering that teaching was far more difficult than he'd imagined. You need to divide it equally, he repeated, drawing another diagram that only seemed to confuse them further. Like pizza slices? Asked Deshawn, the most restless of the group. A light bulb went off. Exactly. Like pizza. If you have 8 slices and 4 people. By the end of the session, the concept had clicked. It was a small victory, but it felt significant. This was real impact, not the performative heroism the media had celebrated. The next day, however, only 2 children showed up. The day after, just 1. Doubt crept in. Was the community rejecting the center? Did they sense some hidden agenda in Chen's generosity? That night, Jamal sat alone in the partially renovated building, surrounded by boxes of donated books and supplies. He'd imagined busy rooms full of eager students, not this empty, echoing space. His phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Mom's working late. Can you pick up Michael from school?" For a moment, Jamal was confused. They didn't have a brother named Michael. Then he realized Marcus meant Michael Chen, who was visiting their home with his mother while Edward was on a business trip. An hour later, Michael sat at the center's makeshift reception desk, swinging his legs and asking endless questions. "Is this where you help kids? Why isn't anyone here? Do they know you're a hero?" "I'm not a hero," Jamal corrected automatically. "And people don't come because, I don't know. Maybe they don't trust that this is real." Michael looked genuinely puzzled. "But it is real. I can see it." "Sometimes adults make simple things complicated," Jamal explained. "My dad says that too. He says people build walls in their minds that aren't really there." Something about the child's innocent observation struck Jamal. Perhaps he'd been approaching this all wrong. He'd been trying to sell the center as a solution when he should have been sharing it as a story. His story. The next morning, Jamal walked into his first class at Winslow with a new determination. When Professor Whitman asked for volunteers to present their personal essays, Jamal raised his hand, something he'd never done before. Standing before his classmates, he didn't recite a polished narrative about overcoming adversity. Instead, he spoke honestly about his life, his neighborhood, and the barriers that existed not just in society, but in people's minds. "We talk about 2 different worlds," he concluded, "but they're really just 2 sides of the same city. The community center isn't charity, it's connection. It's recognizing that our futures are tied together, whether we admit it or not." The classroom remained silent when he finished. Even Whitman seemed taken aback by the raw honesty. But after class, 3 students approached him, including a former friend of Tyler's named Jason. "That thing you said about connections," Jason said awkwardly. "I never thought about it that way. Maybe I could help out sometime. I'm pretty good at math." It was a small opening, but Jamal took it. By the end of the week, Jason and 2 other Winslow students had joined the volunteer team. Word began to spread through both communities, at Winslow and in Jamal's neighborhood. The following Tuesday marked a breakthrough. 7 children arrived for tutoring, met by a diverse team of volunteers. Jason and another Winslow student, Mrs. Rodriguez, and Darnell, who had skeptically attended the first community meeting, but now offered to teach basic computer skills. Watching the interactions, a Winslow lacrosse player patiently helping a young boy sound out words, Darnell showing a girl how to create her first email account. Jamal felt something shift inside him. This wasn't just about education or resources. It was about breaking down invisible barriers, one relationship at a time. As the last child left, Jamal began cleaning up, collecting scattered papers and returning books to shelves. The center still looked shabby, the renovation barely begun, but it felt alive with possibility. The front door creaked open. Jamal looked up, expecting perhaps a parent returning for a forgotten backpack. Instead, Tyler stood there, hands in his pockets, and a conflicted expression on his face. "We need to talk about what happened, and about how I can help." Jamal and Tyler sat on a park bench near the community center, the initial silence laden with tension as Tyler gathered courage to speak. Jamal studied the boy who had tormented him for weeks, now looking unexpectedly vulnerable outside his mansion and away from his entourage of privileged friends. "I don't know how to start this," Tyler finally said, his voice lacking its usual arrogance. He stared at his expensive sneakers, avoiding Jamal's eyes. "My parents are furious about what happened. They've made me go to therapy 3 times a week since the pool incident." "To punish you?" Jamal asked, surprised by this revelation. Tyler laughed without humor. "No, to fix me. The therapist made me talk about why I treated you the way I did, made me confront some stuff I don't like thinking about." The confession caught Jamal off guard. In his mind, Tyler had been a one-dimensional villain, the entitled rich kid who tormented others simply because he could. He hadn't considered that there might be depth beneath the cruelty. "My parents," Tyler continued, still not meeting Jamal's gaze, "they're not around much. Dad works 16-hour days at his investment firm. Mom's always at charity galas or spa retreats. Our house is just a place to sleep between obligations." "That doesn't excuse how you treated me," Jamal said firmly. "I know." Tyler nodded quickly. "I'm not making excuses, just trying to explain. I've spent my whole life being told I need to be perfect. Top grades, captain of the team, Ivy League bound. Failure isn't an option in my family." He finally looked up at Jamal. "Then you showed up. Someone who saved a life while I've never done anything that actually matters, and instead of dealing with that, I tried to tear you down." Jamal absorbed this, unsure how to respond. Part of him wanted to reject Tyler's apparent remorse as too little, too late. Another part recognized the courage it took to admit these things. "So what do you want from me?" Jamal finally asked. "Nothing," Tyler replied. "But I want to offer something. Help with the community center. I have connections, resources. My parents feel guilty about what happened, so they're letting me do pretty much whatever I want right now to make amends." Jamal's instinct was to refuse. But Marcus's voice echoed in his head. "Use every resource available. Pride doesn't build programs." "If you're serious," Jamal said cautiously, "I need to show you my neighborhood first. Not as a visitor or volunteer, but to really see it." The next day, Jamal guided Tyler through his community. Not the sanitized tour given to occasional politicians, but the real experience. The convenience store where bulletproof glass separated customers from cashiers, the playground where equipment had been broken for years, the families crowded into apartments designed for half as many people. Tyler remained uncharacteristically quiet, absorbing everything with wide eyes. At a corner bodega, when an elderly woman struggled with her groceries, Jamal automatically moved to help. Tyler followed his lead, awkwardly carrying bags up 3 flights of stairs to the woman's apartment. "You do this all the time?" Tyler asked afterward, catching his breath. "Not all the time. But yeah, we look out for each other here. We have to." That weekend, Tyler showed up for his first volunteer session at the center. He looked thoroughly uncomfortable in jeans that probably cost more than Jamal's entire wardrobe, but he tried earnestly to help a group of middle schoolers with their science projects. "You're doing it wrong," said Deshaun, the same restless boy Jamal had taught fractions to. "The volcano needs baking soda, not just vinegar." Tyler's face flushed, but he listened as the 10-year-old explained the chemical reaction. By the end of the session, Tyler's designer clothes were stained with red food coloring from a volcanic eruption, but he was smiling. A genuine smile Jamal had never seen at Winslow. Word spread quickly at school. Other students began appearing at the center, curious about Tyler's involvement and Jamal's project. Some came to mock, but found themselves drawn into the work. Others came with genuine interest, having heard Jamal speak in classes about the initiative. As volunteers increased, so did the children attending. Within 2 weeks, they had to create a schedule to accommodate everyone. Zoe organized high school students, Mrs. Rodriguez coordinated elementary school tutoring, and Marcus, still on crutches, oversaw logistics and supplies. The growing success attracted attention. A local reporter visited, taking photos and interviewing Jamal about the center's mission. The resulting article, while well-intentioned, mischaracterized several aspects of the program, portraying it as Chen's charitable project rather than a community-driven initiative. They made it sound like we're helpless recipients of rich people's generosity, Marcus complained, tossing the newspaper aside. Not partners building something together. Before Jamal could address this, a new complication arrived in the form of Councilman Davis, who appeared unannounced one afternoon with a photographer in tow. "Young man," he boomed, hand extended toward Jamal, "I've heard wonderful things about what you're doing here. The City Council wants to offer our official support." As the photographer snapped pictures of Davis with his arm around Jamal's shoulders, the councilman continued, "We could allocate some funding, make this an official city program. Of course, we'd need to incorporate it into our community revitalization initiative. Put our logo on the building, have some oversight." Jamal felt a growing unease. "Thank you, Councilman, but we're doing well with our current structure. The community is directly involved in all decisions." Yes, very admirable," Davis interrupted, barely listening. "But with city backing, we could expand this concept. Think bigger. We're preparing for my re-election campaign, for next year's budget, and this would be perfect for our community outreach portfolio." The conversation grew heated when Davis began suggesting changes to the program structure, including bringing in city-appointed administrators to maximize efficiency. "This isn't a photo op for your campaign," Jamal finally snapped. "The people here are building this themselves, not waiting for politicians to save them." Davis's friendly facade cracked. "You should be more careful about rejecting allies, young man, especially when you're operating in a city building with questionable permits." After the councilman left, Jamal called Edward Chen in a panic. "He threatened the permits. Can he shut us down?" "He can try," Chen replied calmly. "But remember, politics is just another negotiation. Davis wants something: publicity, association with success, voter approval. Understanding that gives you leverage." "How am I supposed to navigate city politics? I'm 16. "The same way you navigate Winslow and your neighborhood, by understanding the unwritten rules and finding allies. Come by my office tomorrow. We'll develop a strategy." The meeting with Chen provided Jamal with a crash course in local politics. Chen explained how to document the center's impact with data, build relationships with other council members, and create community support that would make opposition politically costly. "Never let them make it about you personally," Chen advised. "Make it about the children being served, the families being supported. Politicians can dismiss an individual, but they fear community blowback." Returning to school the next day, Jamal was confronted by a group of Tyler's former friends in the hallway. "Charity case got Tyler expelled," one of them sneered. "Feeling proud of yourself?" "I didn't get anyone expelled," Jamal replied, trying to move past them. "His parents are shipping him to boarding school because of you," another boy said. "Some hero you turned out to be." Jamal was about to respond when Tyler himself appeared, pushing through the group. "Knock it off," he told his former friends. "I got myself suspended, and boarding school was my idea, not my parents'." The boys looked shocked at Tyler's defense of Jamal. More surprising was what happened next. "What Jamal's doing at the center matters," Tyler continued, "more than our stupid social hierarchy or college applications. I've seen it. If you weren't such elitist jerks, you might see it too." A crowd had gathered, watching the confrontation between Tyler and his former social circle. The hallway fell silent as Tyler turned to Jamal. "Ready for the planning meeting? I have those grant application drafts you asked for." As they walked away together, Jamal heard the whispers start. By lunch, the story had transformed into various versions, but the core remained. Tyler Peterson, former King of Winslow, had publicly aligned himself with Jamal Johnson and his community project. That evening, During a strategy session at the center, Letitia arrived with a homemade dinner for the volunteers. She had been working fewer hours since moving to their new apartment, using the extra time to support the center in practical ways. "You're working too hard," she told Jamal, noticing the dark circles under his eyes. "This is wonderful, but I'm worried about you." "I'm fine, Mom. Just busy." "There's busy, and then there's carrying the weight of two worlds on your shoulders. You're still just 16, baby." Her concern was echoed by Zoe later that night as they locked up the center. "You're stretching yourself too thin between Winslow, this place, and being the Chen Foundation poster child." "I'm not their poster child," Jamal protested. "Maybe not intentionally," she conceded, "but that's how the world sees you. The miracle boy who jumped on the tracks and now bridges social divides. It's a lot of pressure." A week later, their core group of volunteers gathered for a planning session. Jamal, Marcus, Zoe, Tyler, Mrs. Rodriguez, and several others from both Winslow and the neighborhood. What had started as Jamal's project had evolved into a collaborative effort, with each person contributing unique perspectives. Tyler, surprising everyone, had proven valuable not just for his connections, but for his organizational skills. Growing up with corporate parents had taught him how to create budgets, write proposals, and navigate bureaucratic systems, all skills the center desperately needed. As donated materials arrived, computers, books, furniture, far exceeding their expectations, the team worked late into the night setting up the new equipment. The center was transforming from a rundown building into a vibrant space with purpose. "This doesn't feel real," Jamal said to Marcus as they surveyed the progress. "It's real," Marcus assured him, "and it's just the beginning." After the planning session, while organizing the new materials, Jamal received a call from Principal Hayes. The Winslow board wanted him to present his project at the annual fundraising gala, an opportunity that could secure the program's future, or expose him to an audience that still viewed him as a curiosity. Jamal stood in his bedroom, struggling with the borrowed tie, as Marcus gave him a mix of advice about the gala, alternating between humor and serious guidance. "Remember," Marcus said, adjusting the knot with his good hand, "when they offer you those tiny appetizers, take two. Those things are never filling, and you don't want your stomach growling during your speech." "I'm not worried about food," Jamal replied, his fingers trembling slightly. "I'm worried about speaking in front of all those people. Rich people. They put their pants on one leg at a time, just like we do. Except their pants probably cost more than our rent." Jamal laughed, despite his nerves. The borrowed suit from Mr. Washington's son was slightly too big in the shoulders, but it was the best they could manage on short notice. Winslow's annual fundraising gala wasn't an event he had ever imagined attending, let alone addressing as a featured speaker. "Seriously, though," Marcus continued, his tone shifting, "remember why you're there. Not for them, but for what the center can become. Speak your truth. Don't try to sound like them." Later that morning, Jamal met with Edward Chen at his downtown office to prepare his presentation. The space was intimidating, floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the city, modern art on the walls, and furniture that probably cost more than everything the Johnsons had ever owned. "The key," Chen explained, pulling up slides on his computer, "is to balance emotional appeal with concrete data. Donors want to feel good, but they also want to know their money is making measurable impact." Jamal looked at the polished presentation Chen's team had created. It featured dramatic before and after photos of the center, quotes from children being helped, and impressive statistics about academic improvement. It was professional, compelling, and somehow felt false. "This isn't quite right," Jamal said hesitantly. "It makes everything look too perfect, too finished." Chen raised an eyebrow. "You don't want to show success?" "I want to show reality. The center isn't a miracle solution. It's a beginning. We're still figuring things out, still making mistakes. Chen leaned back in his chair, studying Jamal. Most people hide their vulnerabilities when asking for money. Maybe that's the problem. Everyone's selling perfection when what we really need is honesty. After a moment, Chen nodded. Revise it. Make it authentic. But remember, you'll have 7 minutes to make your case. Use them wisely. That afternoon, Catherine Chen helped the Johnson family prepare for the event in their new apartment. Though more spacious than their previous home, it was modest by Chen standards, a practical 3-bedroom in a safe neighborhood, not an ostentatious display of wealth. The gala can be overwhelming your first time, Catherine advised, helping Letitia select appropriate jewelry to complement her dress. A simple but elegant navy blue piece they'd found at a department store sale. People will ask personal questions. You don't have to answer anything that makes you uncomfortable. I'm just worried about embarrassing Jamal, Letitia admitted. I don't know which fork to use or how to talk to those kinds of people. Those kinds of people, Catherine repeated with a small smile. I was one of those people once, terrified of saying the wrong thing, using the wrong utensil. My father was a janitor at the university where I met Edward. Letitia looked surprised. I didn't know. Edward doesn't advertise it. Success in his world often means erasing where you came from. But we're trying to teach Michael different values. As they prepared, Jamal's younger siblings peppered Catherine with questions about the gala, excited by the glamour of it all. Kevin wanted to know if there would be famous people. Diana asked if princesses would be there. Their innocence highlighted the absurdity of it all, this parallel universe of extreme wealth existing alongside communities where people worried about basic necessities. While his family prepared with Catherine, Jamal took the bus to the community center for a last-minute check-in. He found several volunteers arguing about the center's direction. We need more structured academic programs, insisted Jason, the Winslow student who had recently joined. Test prep, college application support, advanced tutoring. What these kids need first is a safe space, countered Darnell. Food, mentorship, someone who understands their reality. Not everyone is headed to college. So you're saying we shouldn't have high expectations? Jason shot back. I'm saying we should have relevant expectations. When a kid's worried about violence at home or not having dinner, set prep isn't the priority. Jamal stood in the doorway, watching the tension build. This wasn't the first such argument. As more Winslow students got involved, cultural clashes became inevitable. Well-intentioned volunteers who couldn't fully grasp the community's realities, butting heads with local residents protective of their neighborhood's dignity. Both perspectives matter, Jamal finally intervened. We need the academic support and the holistic support. It's not either-or. His words calmed the immediate tension, but the underlying issue remained. How could he build something truly unified when the participants came from such different realities? That evening, the Johnsons arrived at the Westbrook Hotel's grand ballroom where the Winslow Gala was held. Stepping from their rideshare vehicle, arranged by Chen, Jamal, Marcus, and Letitia entered a world of crystal chandeliers, champagne fountains, and people wearing outfits that cost more than their year's rent. Remember, Marcus whispered, they need you more than you need them tonight. A photographer captured their entrance, and Jamal noticed how eyes followed them, not with the outright hostility he sometimes faced at school, but with curious assessment, as if they were exhibits in a museum. Principal Hayes approached immediately, her usual stern expression replaced with a tight smile. The Johnson family. So wonderful you could join us. Jamal, you're seated at the head table with the board members. Jamal glanced at his mother, reluctant to be separated. We'll be fine, Letitia assured him, though he could see her own nervousness. Go do what you need to do. As he followed Hayes, Jamal spotted Tyler's parents across the room. Mr. Peterson, tall and imposing in his tuxedo, nodded stiffly. Mrs. Peterson looked away, pretending not to see him. Their encounter was awkward, stilted. "Jamal," Mr. Peterson said, extending his hand. "Tyler speaks highly of your project." "Thank you, sir. Tyler's been a big help." "Has he? Good, good. We always encourage community service." His tone suggested Tyler's involvement was a resume-building exercise rather than genuine commitment. Mrs. Peterson finally spoke, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Such a brave thing you did, jumping on those tracks. Though rather reckless, wasn't it? You could have both been killed." Jamal felt the subtle dig beneath her words. Not quite a compliment, not quite a criticism. Just a reminder that he didn't belong in their world. "I suppose some risks are worth taking, ma'am," he replied evenly. Throughout dinner, Jamal observed Hayes skillfully networking, mentioning his successful integration to various donors as if it were her personal achievement. "Winslow's diversity initiatives are creating remarkable opportunities," she told an elderly couple. "Jamal is just one example of our commitment to lifting promising students from underprivileged backgrounds." Each time she spoke about him as if he weren't present, Jamal felt his anxiety about the upcoming speech increase. Would they see him as a person, or just a success story to applaud before returning to their privileged lives? When the MC announced him as the next speaker, panic gripped Jamal. Backstage, waiting to be introduced, he felt his heart pounding. The faces of wealthy donors, board members, and Winslow parents suddenly seemed hostile in his imagination. What right did he have to stand before them? Was he betraying his neighborhood by asking these people for money? Just as he was considering fleeing, Edward Chen appeared beside him. "Nervous?" Chen asked. "Terrified," Jamal admitted. "I don't know if I can do this." "You can," Chen assured him, "but not by trying to be what they expect. Be authentic. That's what they need to hear, even if they don't know it." "What if they don't listen?" "Some won't," Chen acknowledged. "But some will, and those are the ones who matter." The MC's voice boomed. "And now please welcome a remarkable young man whose courage has inspired our community, Jamal Johnson." Taking a deep breath, Jamal walked onto the stage. The spotlights made it difficult to see the audience, but he knew they were there. Hundreds of faces waiting for his story of triumph over adversity, the perfect narrative of a poor kid made good through their generosity. He had prepared a speech, carefully crafted with Chen's help. But standing before the microphone, he set the note cards aside. "Thank you for having me," he began, his voice initially shaky but growing stronger. "I'm here to talk about two different worlds that exist in our city, often just blocks apart from each other." Rather than the polished presentation he'd prepared, Jamal spoke honestly about the disparities he'd witnessed between Winslow and his neighborhood. He described children with identical potential receiving drastically different opportunities. He challenged the notion that a few scholarships could address systemic inequality. "The community center isn't just about tutoring," he continued. "It's about recognition. Recognition that the barriers between our worlds are artificial, created by systems that benefit some while excluding others." He could sense the discomfort in the room. This wasn't the inspirational story they had expected, with neat conclusions about hard work and gratitude. Instead, he was gently but clearly challenging their perceptions about privilege and opportunity. "What I'm asking for tonight isn't just your money, though we certainly need that," he said, drawing a few nervous laughs. "I'm asking for your genuine engagement, not as saviors, but as partners in creating a more just community for everyone." As he concluded, Jamal announced that any donations would support not just his neighborhood center, but a network of similar spaces throughout the city's underserved areas. Because every child deserves a path forward, not just the ones lucky enough to cross paths with generosity. When he finished, there was a moment of silence before the applause began. It wasn't the thunderous, immediate response that comes from entertainment, but a thoughtful, growing appreciation. Some faces remained stony, but others nodded with new understanding. As Jamal left the stage, donations began pouring in, exceeding all expectations. Donors approached him with thoughtful questions rather than condescending praise. Even Principal Hayes seemed taken aback by the response, quickly adapting her talking points to align with his message. Later, as he accepted congratulations, Jamal spotted Richard Blackwood in a corner of the ballroom, engaged in intense conversation with a group of elegantly dressed people and looking in his direction with an expression that mixed interest and calculation. Something was being planned, and Jamal hadn't been consulted. Jamal pushed his way through the crowd, ignoring the congratulatory hands reaching for him. His focus was fixed on Blackwood in the corner, surrounded by men and women in expensive attire, all nodding as the lawyer gestured enthusiastically in Jamal's direction. "Mr. Blackwood," Jamal said, approaching the group, "I couldn't help noticing you were discussing me." The conversation halted abruptly. Blackwood's smile remained, but his eyes narrowed slightly. "Jamal, the man of the hour, I was just telling these investors about your incredible work." "Investors?" Jamal looked at the faces around him, sharp, calculating expressions that assessed his worth even as they smiled politely. "What kind of investments are we talking about?" A woman in a crimson dress extended her hand. "Mary Ann Collier, Elevation Partners. We're very interested in the scalability of your community center model." Scalability? The business jargon immediately raised Jamal's suspicions. Blackwood placed a hand on Jamal's shoulder, steering him slightly away from the group. "Let's discuss this tomorrow. Tonight is for celebration." "No." Jamal firmly removed Blackwood's hand. "I want to know what's being discussed about my project without my knowledge." The group exchanged glances, and Blackwood's professional demeanor slipped momentarily. "Not here, Jamal. This isn't the place." "Then where? When were you planning to tell me?" One of the men stepped forward. "Young man, Richard has presented us with an expansion plan that could transform your little project into a nationwide initiative. Educational centers in underserved communities across the country, with standardized programming and corporate sponsorship." "Nationwide?" Jamal looked at Blackwood in disbelief. "When exactly was I going to hear about this?" "We're in preliminary discussions," Blackwood said smoothly. "I was going to bring you in once we had concrete interest." "Like now?" Jamal could feel his anger rising. "With these people ready to sign checks?" Ms. Collier smiled thinly. "We see tremendous potential for a franchised model. Educational recovery centers, ERCs, could be established in every major city. With proper branding and management, they could generate significant revenue while serving disadvantaged communities." "Revenue?" The word hit Jamal like a slap. The center isn't supposed to be a business. "Everything successful eventually becomes a business," another investor chimed in. "That's how sustainability works." Jamal stared at Blackwood, understanding dawning. "You've been planning this all along, haven't you? While I've been building something for my community, you've been packaging it to sell." Before Blackwood could respond, Edward Chen appeared, placing a steadying hand on Jamal's back. "I see you've met our potential partners," he said, his expression unreadable. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion in a more appropriate setting." The next morning, Jamal sat in Chen's office, still seething. The luxury surroundings that had once impressed him now felt like part of an elaborate deception. The glass-topped conference table between them reflected their tense expressions. "You knew," Jamal said flatly. "You knew Blackwood was shopping the center concept to investors." Chen didn't immediately deny it. "I knew he was exploring options for scaling the model, yes. Without telling me, without asking the community that's supposed to benefit. Jamal, successful programs need to grow to survive. That requires capital, infrastructure. It requires trust." Jamal rarely raised his voice, but he couldn't contain his frustration. The center works because people trust it's for them, not for profit. Before Chen could respond, Catherine entered with coffee. The tension in the room was palpable as she set down the tray. "Edward," she said quietly, "perhaps you should listen before defending." Chen looked at his wife, surprised by her intervention. Catherine rarely involved herself in his business dealings, but when she did, he paid attention. "The presentation Blackwood showed those investors," she continued. "It changes the fundamental nature of what Jamal created. It's not about community empowerment anymore. It's about marketable services." Chen sighed, removing his glasses to rub the bridge of his nose. "The hard reality, Jamal, is that philanthropic models rarely sustain themselves. Initial enthusiasm fades. Donors move on to new causes. Without a business component, most community initiatives collapse within 3 years. So the solution is to turn it into a franchise, charge fees, put a price tag on help. The solution is balance," Chen countered. "Using business principles to ensure sustainability while maintaining the mission." The door opened again, but this time it was Michael who entered. The boy looked between the adults, sensing the tension. "Dad? Why is everyone fighting?" he asked innocently. Chen looked uncomfortable. "We're not fighting, Michael. We're having a business discussion." "About helping people?" Michael persisted. "Mom says helping shouldn't be a business." The simple statement hung in the air, highlighting the fundamental conflict between Chen's practical approach and the center's idealistic origins. After Michael was gently escorted out, Catherine turned to her husband. "He has a point, Edward. Some things shouldn't be commodified." Later that day, Jamal gathered Marcus and his core team at the community center. The space had transformed remarkably in the weeks since they began. Fresh paint brightened the walls, new computers lined one room, and colorful educational posters covered bulletin boards. But it still felt like their space, created for and by the community. "They want to turn this into a chain," Jamal explained, unable to keep the disappointment from his voice. "Educational recovery centers across the country, with corporate sponsors and standardized programming." "Like McDonald's for tutoring?" Marcus asked, his skepticism evident. "Who would run these places? People from the communities they serve, or hired managers who've never lived there?" "That's just it. The plan doesn't mention community leadership at all. It's about efficiency, measurable outcomes, revenue streams." Zoe shook her head. "So they're taking your idea, removing everything that makes it special, and mass-producing it. Classic." Tyler, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke up. "Before we dismiss it entirely, we should think strategically. My father always says that when facing a business threat, the best defense is a better plan." "This isn't a business," Jamal objected. "No, but it exists in a world of businesses," Tyler countered. "If we don't create a sustainable model, someone else will create one for us, like Blackwood is trying to do." The suggestion sparked an idea. Over the next week, the core team worked tirelessly, researching other successful community models, developing a comprehensive counter-proposal. They studied nonprofit structures, sustainable funding, approaches and methods for balancing impact with operational needs. Tyler proved unexpectedly valuable, applying the business knowledge he'd absorbed from his father towards social good rather than profit. While the others bristled at some of his corporate terminology, his technical knowledge was undeniable. "The key difference between our approach and Blackwood's," Tyler explained during one late-night strategy session, "is that ours keeps decision-making power with the community while his centralizes it with investors." During this period of intense planning, Principal Hayes made an unexpected visit to the center. Jamal found her examining the classroom space with a critical eye. "Impressive progress," she said without warmth. "The board is quite interested in the partnership possibilities Mr. Blackwood has presented." "It's not a partnership if one side dictates all the terms," Jamal replied. Hayes's smile tightened. "The Chen Foundation has been extremely generous, Jamal. But generosity has limits. The commercial model offers sustainability that philanthropy cannot. And if I don't support it?" Her implication was clear without being stated explicitly. Winslow Academy has invested considerably in your development. We hope you'll consider what's best for all parties involved." The threat lingered after she left. While not directly stated, the message was unmistakable. His scholarship might depend on his cooperation with Blackwood's plan. The controversy reached local media when a reporter overheard Blackwood discussing the franchise concept at a business lunch. The resulting article portrayed Jamal as resisting commercialization, which painted him as either principled or naive, depending on the reader's perspective. The publicity created a new challenge when several volunteers withdrew from the program, concerned about being involved in a controversial project. Parents called with questions, wondering if the center would start charging fees or change its mission. Trust, so carefully built, began to erode under the uncertainty. One afternoon, seeking escape from the mounting pressure, Jamal found himself at the subway station where everything began. The platform was ordinary now, filled with commuters absorbed in their phones, unaware of the moment that had changed his life months earlier. He watched the trains arrive and depart, thinking about how a single decision, jumping onto those tracks, had set in motion events he could never have anticipated. Now he faced another pivotal choice: compromise his vision for security, or risk losing everything by standing firm. While lost in thought, he noticed a woman struggling with a stroller on the stairs. Without hesitation, he moved to help, just as someone else arrived from the opposite direction: Michael's mother, Catherine Chen. "Jamal," she said, surprised. "What are you doing here?" "Just thinking," he replied as they set the stroller safely on the platform. The grateful mother thanked them before hurrying toward an approaching train. "About the center?" Catherine asked. "About everything. How it all started here. How I thought saving Michael was the hard part, but that was just the beginning." Catherine nodded. "The accident changed us too, you know. Edward, especially. Made him reevaluate what matters. He has a funny way of showing it, supporting Blackwood's plan." "Edward sees the world through practicality," she explained. "It's how he survived his own difficult childhood. But that doesn't mean he can't learn another perspective." The conversation gave Jamal a new insight into the complex man behind the business facade. That evening, he worked with renewed determination on the counter-proposal, incorporating elements that might address Chen's practical concerns while preserving the center's soul. The formal presentation was scheduled at Chen's office, with Blackwood and several potential investors present. Jamal arrived with his team: Marcus, Zoe, Tyler, and two community members who had become integral to the center's operations. Blackwood opened with his franchise model, complete with slick graphics showing projected growth and revenue. The investors nodded approvingly at the charts and financial projections. "While this approach is certainly profitable," Blackwood concluded, "it also serves communities in need. A win-win for everyone involved." When Jamal's turn came, he presented a different vision: a network of independent centers, each adapted to its local community's needs, supported by a combination of sustainable funding sources rather than a profit model. The centers would share resources and knowledge, but maintain individual identities and local governance. "This isn't just idealism," Jamal emphasized. "Research shows that community-led initiatives have higher long-term success rates precisely because they're responsive to local needs." As he presented case studies and financial projections, prepared with Tyler's help, Jamal could see Blackwood becoming increasingly agitated. "This is naive," the lawyer finally interrupted. "Feel-good community ownership doesn't pay bills or create sustainable infrastructure. Investors need returns, not warm feelings." "Perhaps," Chen interjected, studying the competing proposals thoughtfully. "We've been asking the wrong question. The issue isn't whether to choose business or community, but how to honor both needs authentically." Blackwood attempted to regain control of the meeting, dismissing Jamal's plan as idealistic and naive, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Several investors began asking more probing questions about community involvement and long-term impact beyond financial returns. As the debate intensified, Edward Chen suddenly raised his hand for silence. The room immediately stilled as all eyes turned to him. He looked directly at Jamal with an expression that combined respect with something deeper, a recognition that transcended their different worlds. "This evening you showed that you possess something much more valuable than money or connections. You have unshakable principles, and I need your help with Michael." Jamal and Edward Chen walked through the manicured gardens of the Chen mansion, the evening air cool against their faces. The tension from the confrontation with Blackwood had dissipated, replaced by an unexpected vulnerability in Chen's demeanor. "I've never been good at discussing personal matters," Chen began, his usual commanding tone softened. "Business problems have clear solutions. Family issues are messier." Jamal remained silent, still processing Chen's surprising request for help with Michael. The mansion loomed behind them, its windows glowing warmly in the gathering dusk. "Michael has been struggling," Chen continued, stopping beside a stone bench. "Despite all our resources, he has few friends, little confidence. His teachers report he rarely speaks in class. The other children," Chen hesitated, "they see him as different. The shy, awkward son of a demanding father." "He seems like a good kid," Jamal offered. "Smart, thoughtful." "He is. And that's part of the problem. He notices everything, feels everything deeply." Chen sat on the bench, gesturing for Jamal to join him. "When I saw you in that meeting, standing firm on your principles despite the pressure, I realized what I've been doing wrong with Michael." "What do you mean?" "I've been trying to shape him into what I think he should be, rather than supporting who he is." Chen looked directly at Jamal. "When you jumped onto those tracks, you didn't just save his life physically. You became someone he admires, perhaps the only true hero he's ever known." Jamal shifted uncomfortably. "I'm no hero, Mr. Chen. To Michael you are, and not just for the rescue. He sees how you navigate between different worlds without losing yourself. That's a skill I never mastered." The conversation left Jamal with a new understanding of Chen's interest in him. This wasn't just about gratitude or community investment. It was about a father seeking guidance for his son from an unlikely source. The following afternoon, Chen arranged for Jamal to spend time with Michael. They met at a park near the community center, away from both the mansion's opulence and the direct scrutiny of Chen himself. Michael sat on a swing, kicking at the wood chips beneath his feet. At 10 years old, he seemed smaller than his age, his designer clothes hanging slightly loose on his frame. "Dad says you're going to teach me stuff," Michael said, his eyes fixed downward. "Not exactly," Jamal replied, taking the swing beside him. "I thought we could just hang out, get to know each other better." "Because my dad's paying you to?" The bluntness caught Jamal off guard. "No one's paying me to be here, Michael. I wanted to come." Michael looked skeptical. "Everyone does what my dad wants because he's rich. That's what kids at school say." "Is that why it's hard to make friends? Because they think you're just the rich kid?" Michael nodded slowly. "Nobody sees me, just my dad's money." He kicked harder at the wood chips. "And I'm not good at sports or video games or anything cool. I'm just the weird kid who almost died on the subway." The self-assessment was painfully honest, revealing a loneliness that transcended privilege. Jamal recognized an echo of his own experience at Winslow, being seen as a category rather than a person. "You know," Jamal said, "I understand more than you might think. At school, people see me as the scholarship kid or the hero, not just Jamal. But you're good at stuff. You run the center, people listen to you. That didn't happen overnight, and I mess up all the time, trust me." As they talked, Jamal began to understand Michael's particular challenges. Unlike most children of privilege, he lacked the confident entitlement that often came with wealth. Instead, he carried the burden of enormous expectations while being painfully aware of the distance between himself and others. They spent the afternoon exploring the neighborhood around the center. Michael asked thoughtful questions about everything: why buildings were abandoned, why some areas had no grocery stores, why the playground equipment was broken. His curiosity was genuine, not voyeuristic. When they stopped for ice cream at a local shop, the owner recognized Jamal and gave them extra scoops. Michael seemed amazed by the simple interaction. "He knows you," Michael observed, "like really knows you, not just who your parents are." On their walk back, an idea began forming in Jamal's mind. Michael didn't need protection from reality. He needed meaningful connection to it. The next day, Jamal approached Chen with a proposal: integrate Michael more actively in the community center, not as the donor's son, but as a regular participant with responsibilities suited to his age. "He needs to be valued for his contributions, not his family name," Jamal explained. "Give him a real role, not just a visitor's pass." Chen seemed uncertain. "He's very sensitive. I don't want him exposed to what? Real life? He's already isolated enough." After some negotiation, Chen agreed to a trial period. Michael would join the center's weekend programming, helping with a reading club for younger children. The boy's quiet nature and patience made him unexpectedly effective with shy first graders who found other volunteers intimidating. Meanwhile, at the center, Jamal gathered the remaining volunteers to reorganize after the controversy with Blackwood and the investors. The dispute had caused some supporters to withdraw, but it had also clarified who was truly committed to the original vision. Marcus, now moving with just a slight limp as his leg healed, proved invaluable in reshaping their approach. His practical experience navigating community conflicts helped Jamal see beyond immediate reactions. "Power struggles always look personal," Marcus advised during a planning session. "But underneath, it's usually about who controls resources and who gets to make decisions." This insight helped Jamal understand the real issue with Blackwood's proposal. It wasn't just commercial versus nonprofit, but about who would determine the center's future: the community it served, or outside investors with their own agendas. A surprise visit from Blackwood himself tested this new understanding. The lawyer arrived at the center unannounced one afternoon, his expensive suit out of place among the mismatched furniture and handmade decorations. "I came to see the failure in progress," he announced with barely concealed satisfaction. "Without proper backing, these community projects always collapse." Instead of anger, Jamal felt a strange calm. "Look around, Mr. Blackwood. Does this look like failure to you?" The room was bustling with activity: high school students tutoring younger children, a resume workshop for adults in one corner, a computer class in another. Despite the funding uncertainty, the work continued. Blackwood observed the scene, his expression shifting from smugness to something more complex. "It's busy, but busy doesn't mean sustainable." "Maybe we define success differently," Jamal suggested. "For us, it's impact, not profit." As they talked, Blackwood gradually revealed the real reason for his visit. Several investors had been impressed by Jamal's counter-proposal, questioning Blackwood's dismissal of it. Some even suggested incorporating elements of both approaches. "I may have been hasty in my assessment," Blackwood admitted reluctantly. "The community component does add value that can't be easily replicated in a purely commercial model." By the end of the conversation, Blackwood had made a surprising offer: pro bono legal assistance to establish the center as a proper non-profit organization with bylaws protecting its community-led structure. "Consider it professional curiosity," he said, avoiding any appearance of apology. "And perhaps a hedge against a changing marketplace." The next day brought another unexpected development. Michael arrived at the center with 3 classmates from his private school, all clearly from wealthy families, but awkwardly eager to help. "I told them about the reading club," Michael explained, a new confidence in his voice. They didn't believe me at first, but they wanted to see. The presence of these children created new bridges between worlds. One boy, initially standoffish, became animated while helping a 7-year-old build a model volcano. A girl who arrived with designer shoes she was afraid to scuff ended the day cross-legged on the floor, deep in conversation with local teenagers about music. In a quieter moment, Jamal observed a touching scene. Letitia guiding a group of single mothers through the complicated paperwork for healthcare benefits, sharing her hard-won knowledge of the system. Her nursing assistant training made her an invaluable resource for families navigating medical bureaucracy. "You don't need insurance for the clinic on 3rd Street," she explained patiently. "And always ask for the financial assistance forms. They don't offer them unless you know to ask." The practical advice, delivered with understanding rather than condescension, created bonds that transcended charity. These women weren't receiving help. They were sharing resources within a community. The center's momentum continued building as Tyler and other Winslow students organized a massive donation drive at the school. What began as a small initiative exploded into a school-wide competition between homerooms, resulting in supplies that filled 3 moving trucks. "I've never seen Winslow kids this excited about anything that didn't involve themselves," Zoe remarked as they sorted through the donations. Even more heartening was the return of volunteers who had left during the controversy. They arrived tentatively at first, expecting rejection. Instead, they found a strengthened community, more clear-eyed about its mission, but still welcoming to those who shared its values. "We missed this place," admitted Darnell, who had withdrawn in protest over the commercialization threat. "Nowhere else feels like this, like we're building something that matters." The reconciliation extended to unexpected quarters when Principal Hayes made a surprisingly humble visit. Her usual imperious manner was subdued as she toured the center, observing the integration of Winslow students with local children. "The board is impressed with what you've accomplished," she told Jamal. "They've authorized additional resources, transportation, faculty advisors, facilities use, without conditions. Your approach has merit." The acknowledgement, while carefully worded to preserve her authority, represented a significant shift. Hayes had recognized that controlling Jamal's narrative no longer served her interests. Better to align herself with his success than oppose it. By month's end, the center hosted a community gathering that embodied Jamal's vision. People from both his worlds mingling naturally, collaborating as equals. Michael Chen proudly led his reading group. Edward and Catherine chatted with local parents without condescension, and Winslow students worked alongside neighborhood teens on joint projects. Standing in a quiet corner, watching this integration of worlds that had once seemed irreconcilable, Jamal felt a sense of accomplishment deeper than any academic achievement or athletic victory. Marcus joined him, nodding toward Michael, who was animatedly explaining a book to a younger child. "You did good with that kid. He's got a confidence I didn't expect. He just needed to be seen for himself, not his family name." The evening ended with promises of continued collaboration, expanded programming, and a growing network of supporters who understood and respected the center's community-led approach. As Jamal prepared to lock up, an envelope was delivered by courier. Inside was an old newspaper article showing a young Edward Chen receiving a community service award decades ago before becoming a businessman, with a handwritten note. "Some circles need to be closed. There's more to this story than you imagine." Jamal searched for Edward Chen hours before the inauguration ceremony, clutching the old newspaper article in his hand. He found him in the community center's small office, reviewing last-minute preparations. "Mr. Chen," Jamal said, holding up the yellowed clipping, "I need to ask you about this." Chen looked up, his expression shifting from surprise to resignation when he saw the article. The photo showed a much younger Edward Chen, perhaps 18, receiving an award for community service. His face was leaner, his clothes simple, but the determined expression was unmistakable. "Where did you get that?" Chen asked quietly. "Someone delivered it last night. The note said there's more to your story than I know." Jamal placed the article on the desk between them. "This was taken in this neighborhood, wasn't it? At the old community hall that got torn down." Chen stood and walked to the window, looking out at the transformed center that would officially open in just a few hours. The fresh paint, new computers, and renovated spaces represented a journey that had come full circle in ways Jamal was only beginning to understand. "I grew up 6 blocks from here," Chen finally said, "in the Parkview housing project that they demolished 10 years ago. My parents were immigrants who worked factory jobs, 16 hours a day." Jamal tried to reconcile this information with the powerful businessman he'd come to know. "You never mentioned that you came from this neighborhood." "The business world I entered doesn't value that part of my history," Chen replied. "Success meant reinvention. Erasing where I came from became second nature." "But this award," Jamal pointed to the article, "this was for community work here?" Chen nodded, turning back to face Jamal. "There was a program called Future Leaders, run by a teacher named Mr. Harrison, who believed kids from this neighborhood could do more than survive. We could thrive. He created a space very much like what you've built here." "What happened to it?" "Funding cuts, political changes. Mr. Harrison got sick. Without his advocacy, the program collapsed." Chen's voice carried a rare emotion. "By then, I had a scholarship to college. I promised myself I'd come back someday, but life happened," Jamal finished for him. "Career happened, marriage, success that pulled me further from this place. I told myself I was helping in other ways, through donations, through foundation work. And then Michael fell onto those tracks." Chen's eyes met Jamal's, "and a young man from my old neighborhood jumped to save him without hesitation. When I saw the video, something broke open inside me. Not just gratitude, but recognition. You reminded me of who I used to be before I built walls around myself." The revelation explained so much: Chen's interest in Jamal, his unexpected support, his determination to fund the community center. It wasn't just about repaying a debt for saving Michael. It was about reconnecting with his own abandoned roots. "That's why my coldness bothered you at first," Chen continued. "I had become exactly the kind of person I used to resent. Someone who treated this community as a charity case, rather than as a place of value and dignity." Before Jamal could respond, there was a knock at the door. To his surprise, Mrs. Williams, his elderly neighbor from their old apartment building, peered in. Chen looked equally startled. "I was told I might find you here, Edward Chen," she said, entering the office with the aid of her cane. "It's been a long time since you delivered newspapers to my door." Chen's composure faltered. "Mrs. Williams, you still live in the neighborhood?" 57 years now." She looked him up and down. "You grew up nice. Your mother would be proud." The encounter created an extraordinary moment of reconnection. Mrs. Williams didn't treat Chen as a wealthy benefactor, but as the son of neighbors she had known decades ago. Her presence collapsed the carefully maintained distance between Chen's past and present. As they talked, she reminded him of details he had tried to forget. The corner store where he had his first job, the basketball court where he played until dark, the community leaders who had invested in local children like him. "You're finishing what Mr. Harrison started," she told him, looking around the center. "Took you long enough to remember where you came from." The gentle rebuke carried no bitterness, only the straightforward honesty of someone who had witnessed the neighborhood's struggles and resilience over generations. As the morning progressed, the center filled with people preparing for the inauguration. Volunteers positioned chairs, hung banners, and set up refreshments. The energy was palpable, a mixture of pride, excitement, and community ownership that transcended any individual contribution. Media representatives arrived, setting up cameras and seeking interviews. This time, Jamal faced them with confidence, knowing exactly what story he wanted to tell. Not one of individual heroism, but of collective purpose and shared history. "This center belongs to everyone who helped build it," he told a reporter. "It's not about what I did or what the Chen Foundation provided. It's about what happens when people recognize their connection to each other." By midday, the center was packed. Residents from the neighborhood sat alongside Winslow students and teachers. City officials mingled with local community leaders. The Chen family, including a proudly beaming Michael, occupied seats in the front row. Every face represented a different thread in the complex tapestry that had become the center's supporting community. Jamal took the podium for the opening speech, scanning the audience that represented both worlds. He now navigated with increasing confidence. "3 months ago, I jumped onto subway tracks to save a child I didn't know," he began. "People called it heroism, but it was really just instinct, a recognition that we're responsible for each other. What's happened since then, this center, these connections, these new possibilities, that's the real miracle." He acknowledged everyone who had contributed, emphasizing that the center's value lay not in its physical improvements, but in its potential for ongoing impact. "Buildings don't change lives," he said. "Relationships do. Programs don't create opportunity. People do, when they commit to each other's success." Edward Chen followed Jamal at the podium, publicly acknowledging his roots in the neighborhood for the first time in decades. The admission visibly moved many older residents who remembered the Chen family. He announced a permanent endowment to ensure the center's sustainability and support for similar initiatives in other underserved areas. "Some circles need to be closed," Chen said, echoing the note Jamal had received. "Some debts can never be fully repaid, but we can honor them by creating new opportunities for others." When the formal speeches ended, the real celebration began. Michael Chen proudly led tours of the reading corner he had helped design, explaining his book club program with newfound confidence. "We meet twice a week," he told visitors. "Anyone can join. You don't have to be good at reading yet, that's the whole point." In another room, Tyler and Marcus, an unlikely partnership that still surprised everyone, presented their vocational training initiative. "Not everyone wants to go to college," Marcus explained, "but everyone deserves a path to meaningful work and fair pay. We've got commitments from 12 local businesses to provide apprenticeships," Tyler added, "including my father's company, which is finally doing something useful with its resources." Zoe gathered a group of Winslow students, outlining plans to replicate elements of the center's model in other neighborhoods. "This isn't just a one-off success story," she insisted. "It's a template we can adapt for different communities across the city." During a quiet moment in the celebration, Deshawn, the fidgety boy who had struggled with fractions during the center's first tutoring session, approached Jamal with a certificate in hand. "I got a B+ on my math test," he announced proudly. "First time ever. My mom said to thank you." The simple moment of academic progress, amid all the grand speeches and ambitious plans, reminded Jamal of the center's core purpose. Each small victory, a child understanding a concept, a teenager discovering a talent, a parent finding resources, represented the real impact of their work. Later, as the celebration continued around them, Jamal and his mother, Letitia, found a quiet corner to talk. "I always knew you were special," she said, straightening his tie with the automatic gesture of a mother who couldn't help caring for her child, no matter his age or accomplishments. "But I never imagined all this. I just happened to be on that platform at the right moment, Mom." "No," Letitia shook her head firmly. "Jumping on those tracks, maybe that was chance. But everything since? The way you've brought people together, stood your ground, built something meaningful, that's who you are, baby. That's the man I always knew you could be." Her words carried the weight of years of sacrifice and unwavering belief in his potential. even when circumstances suggested limited possibilities. In her recognition, Jamal found a profound affirmation that transcended any external validation. As the day wound down, Jamal found himself back at the subway platform where everything had begun. Standing safely behind the yellow line, he watched trains arrive and depart, carrying people between worlds that seemed separate but were fundamentally connected. The platform looked ordinary now, no memory of danger, no echo of screams or pounding heartbeats. Yet this mundane space had been the catalyst for transformation that rippled outward in ways he was still discovering. Months later, on an ordinary morning, Jamal walked confidently through Winslow Academy's hallways, no longer feeling like an intruder, chatting easily with classmates from both worlds. His phone vibrated with a notification. The community center had just received a national award for social innovation. Smiling, he slipped the phone back into his pocket. The recognition was gratifying, but the real value lay in the lives being transformed daily, including his own.